You are listening to the Worlding Podcast, where we explore the relationship of how we are both, shaping and being shaped by our surroundings. The podcast traces interconnections by inviting each episode's guest to pass on the mic to someone who has influenced their world. And now, here's your host, dance artist Renae Shadler.
Hello friends. Today we complete our 10th string figure with my guest Anna Farley, an autistic artist based in Hull in the UK. The core of Anna's practice is access and inclusion with regards to neuro-difference and disability. Her training, consultation and lived experience creates the basis of her artworks. In this episode, we'll approach the idea of worlding in relation to how Anna navigates her life with support and family. Thanks so much for chatting with us today.
Hi, thanks for having me. And thank you, Bibi, for the nomination. Yeah.
I think it's great to say for listeners that these pair laughs that you are hearing through your headphones are Anna and Anna K, her support worker. So welcome also to Anna K. Thanks for being with us during this recording.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for having me.
So when we were preparing for this podcast, Anna shared with me how you see the world visually and how pictures for you are easier than words. I would like to start then by audio describing myself. I am a woman with short brown hair in my mid-30s. I have what some would say a big smile and open green eyes. I have quite big eyes in relation to my head.
I'd agree with the big smile. It's very nice.
Oh, that's sweet. And I'm wearing a brown jumper and I'm standing at my desk speaking into a microphone with headphones on. And usually we record these episodes over Zoom with our video off, but today we've decided to keep the video on so we can connect also visually.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm Anna Farley. I am a woman, sometimes, who is mid-30s. I'm medium height, about 5'7", and I have glasses on, and they are clear. I'm a hipster. No, I'm joking. And I have brown hair that comes down to my shoulders, and I'm a little bit chubby, but I love it. And I'm sat at my a desk is a is a loose term for it, in front of my computer. And I'm also joined, as I most usually am in a work capacity, by Anna Knowles, who is more than capable to introduce herself and describe herself.
I'm Anna Knowles. I have the absolute pleasure of being Anna's support worker, and it is an absolute pleasure. I'm in my early 40s.
And doesn't look it.
And have shoulder length brown hair. I'm sitting directly next to Anna, and I'm here to help her through this process when she needs me.
It's important to also tell listeners that we'll be taking breaks during this recording, and during the breaks we'll play a 30-second soundtrack, and when we come back we'll let you know how long our breaks were in real time. This is to be transparent about our recording process. And this was a beautiful proposition by you, Anna, also in relation to your work on access and inclusion.
Yeah, I mean, when we first started talking, Renae, I was really interested about the format of a podcast. Obviously also because I'm someone who sometimes audio is maybe not the best way to get things from me. So it was very interesting to be asked to do this, and I realised I had no idea about what goes into making a podcast. And do you listeners, do you know what goes into making a podcast? Have you ever been in one? And I kind of was interested to push back to Renae a bit about what this process is, and what makes a good podcast, what makes a bad podcast. And it's been very interesting, and but I am very nervous. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is nerve-wracking. But yeah, so I think this time the formula for this episode is going to be a bit different. And we're excited to take you through that, as though you're here with us. Which I guess they kind of are, no?
Totally. Perhaps in the future, because we're recording in December from Berlin and the UK in Hull. So perhaps in another location, in another time, but there's an essence of us with you now in your headphones.
Brilliant.
I know you're really working on creating neurodiverse or neuro-different spaces and raising the visibility of people with disabilities. And you refer to yourself as an autistic artist rather than an artist with autism. And during my work in inclusive spaces, I was always told this was an absolute no-go to put the disability before the role of the human or the human themselves when it's describing a living being. So can you tell me a little bit about that choice? Because even in the introduction, I was also a little bit nervous saying that as a kickoff to an episode.
Yeah, of course. Yes, so disclaimer, this was fully consensual. Renae has not gone off track and said this out of turn. Not at all. It's the way in which I describe myself. And yes, I do. I get a lot of questions around that. But for me, the reason why I do that is because for me, my autism is a huge part of my identity, and it shapes everything that I do. So because it's my life, it's my experience, and I can't separate that, and neither would I want to. So I'm not really Anna with autism, you know. Like right now, I'm Anna with Anna, who's my support worker, but my autism is in me. It's not, you know. And I think it's really important, because then I'm understanding my position within the arts. And you know, I think the way in which we talk about disability in the arts is still very dated, in ways that potentially other, you know, minorities are being, you know, more progressive about how they talk about who they are and what's important. I'm neurodiverse, although I called it neuro-difference just in case people aren't familiar with what that means. And that means that I'm autistic, but also I'm neurodiverse, and I have other conditions. So I have co-occurring conditions. I can list them, but it's a bit like bingo. So I'm autistic, I'm dyslexic, I have ADD, so I can get distracted. I have OCD, which, you know, is obsessive compulsions, and I also get a lot of anxiety because of all of those things, and depression. So yeah, there's a lot going on. So the term neurodiverse is good for me. But I describe myself as autistic, as an autistic artist, because that's the all my other conditions are either secondary secondary developed, like my mental health difficulties because of my autism, and some of the other ones are to do with coping with that as well. So yeah, it's complex.
Totally. And not only is there a lot going on inside you, but you're also doing a lot outside. And I'd love to turn to one of your recent visual guides, which was for Set and Reset at the Tate Modern. And in this guide, you say it's for everyone and anyone, giving visitors another way to access the display. Can you share with listeners and myself a little bit about this process of creating a visual guide for an exhibition?
So first and foremost is to definitely talk about how the fact that in the visual arts, talking in image is like off limits because there's almost like it infringes on the sacrosanct. What's this word? The sanctity, that's a better word, of the artwork. But of course, this is, we don't all communicate in formal educational modes. So really, I go into an exhibition and I imagine an alternative future for how we talk about art without necessarily using speech or text. And we rely so heavily on verbal instruction as well within gallery scenarios in terms of how important information is shared with guests and visitors. The thing is there's so many people in society that can benefit from better methods of communication and alternative ones. I mean, not everyone has the same educational journey and access.
So that was our first example of a break, and that break for us was 4 minutes and 50 seconds. We were just chatting on the pause actually about worlding and the concept of this show about really shaping and being shaped by our surroundings and having different relations to our surroundings, which also include our bodies and feelings and this very thick emotional landscape. So I was just telling Anna how important it is actually to have her lived experience as part of the program. And thank you so much, listeners, as well, for enjoying perhaps this short sound injections, because I'm definitely really enjoying the process.
You know, typically what works for someone with additional needs tends to benefit everyone. So for me, maybe we've already said this, maybe you said this in the beginning, that I think in pictures, which is something that I realised when listening to Temple Grandin, who is, if you don't know who Temple Grandin is, she's the woman who speaks to cows. No, I mean, obviously, that's just the title of one of the documentaries about her. She's an autistic pioneer in animal well-being, basically, as they go to the slaughter. But she basically redesigned the way in which animals are facing their end through squeezing squeezing them to calm them. And this is something that I also, pressure is my friend. And yeah, so Temple Grandin did a lot about the fact that she thinks in pictures. And for me, that was like, ding, light bulb moment. Oh my goodness, I do that. Which actually, Renae, this is quite interesting. So if you ask me a simple question, maybe just ask me just anything, very, very simple question.
Do you like coffee?
Okay, so what I have to do is here, do you like coffee? And then I have to turn it into me, because the question being asked at me. So it's does Anna like coffee? And then I think about the words in my brain as a sentence. Do you like coffee? ? And then I turn those letters, almost I'm thinking of the words more like images, like when you're a kid and you're learning how to read and write and you pictorialize to gain script. And then I think about myself and what I look like. For some reason I'm sat at my kitchen table, probably because we're talking about food and drink. And then I'm thinking about a cup of coffee with the steam rising off of it. And then I'm thinking that I don't like that smell. And I'm thinking what it's like if I taste it and my face goes, and it's bitter. And I think, no, I don't like coffee. And then I have to, so that's all happened as pictures. My answer is so far pictures in my head. So then I have to turn those pictures into images of what the words look like for my answer. And so the images would be like, no, obviously, is the first answer. And then I drink tea. And then I'm thinking about teacups. And then I have to then say, no, Renae, I don't like coffee. But I do like tea. It's a lot. So that just gives you an idea of all this processing that happens. So, for example, if you had held up a picture of a cup of coffee, which the Makaton for coffee is really funny, because for tea it's a flat palm with your left hand, and then you kind of make as though you're gripping the handle on the teacup and lift it to your lips, and that's a cup of tea. But if you want coffee, it's like a tumbler, so it's like you've got your hands around a beaker, and then you drink, and then you use the grip as a C for coffee. Which is so weird. So I can't remember why I started talking about Makaton, but yeah, it's a long process basically. But that was it. Had you held up a picture of coffee, I could have just shook my head.
Nice.
Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
Instead of having to find the words, you see? Which obviously also, this is what we were talking about at the beginning when I was saying it's very interesting to do a podcast, which is an audio-based portrait of us in this moment, because it's a perfect challenge for me.
Absolutely. And also for listeners that aren't familiar with Makaton, it's a form of sign language. So yeah, that's another process in this visualization of information. But I'm going to stay a little bit longer on the visual guide, Anna, because also in your guide, you talk about one of your boundaries at the beginning is you do you, which I find so interesting because obviously you're interpreting the exhibition and providing images in which to access the content, but you're also an agent in that. So you're already taking a position, but allowing people experiencing the exhibition to perhaps be inspired by your position, but really make their own. And I think that's a very generous way of assisting an exhibition and an access point into it.
I think that's very kind. I'm glad that you see it that way. I guess when I'm doing it, I don't think about that so much. What I think about is how sad it is that I myself struggle in those environments because I feel like I need to act a certain way, present a certain way. And that there's all these kind of hidden bureaucracies around art spaces that are very much this privileged knowledge. Like, you know, there's no how to go around a gallery. And neither should there be, I guess. But the problem is that there are loads of hidden rules. There's social conduct that's expected. And it's really intimidating if you don't know what those things are. So that's what that was about, really. It's almost, I'm telling myself, which luckily has a wider lesson, maybe. But yeah, all the work that I do in terms of my access, I'm basically just trying to find ways to be there myself. So it comes from a very genuine place, these kind of choices to say that thing, like, you do you. I'm telling myself that in a way. I'm saying, look, it's okay. You can be here. You have a right to be here, especially in a publicly funded gallery, of course.
It really reminds me of the do not do symbols, which I've seen often when you enter a gallery, which is usually a black and white image with a red circle and a red line through it. So you might have a skateboard and then a red circle and a red line through it, or you know, like a drink cup, you know, with a red circle and a red line through it. And I know when I go to galleries, I often feel overwhelmed, like, because I spend a lot of time, I really enjoy words, so it's the opposite. I spend a lot of time reading the placards, but then I'm often slower than my friends. And there's a pressure to get to the end, so I'm often trying to go a little bit fast, even though I'm reading. And I would always love to just lie down on the ground, like just for 5 minutes or something, lie down and get up. But actually, now you're talking about it, I can almost imagine like a person lying down with a red circle and a red line through it, because it's very clear in a gallery you don't lie on the floor. Like,
well, I do.
As an adult? Yeah, you do? Okay, that's great.
Crisis happens when it happens, you know.
Amazing.
But seriously, yeah, of course, you know, that's a great piece of work. Thank you. I will bear that in mind. Like 2 doors just covered with you can and you cannot.
Yeah, the hidden rules, they're endless, I think, in these public spaces, and especially institutions.
Yes. And I think also there's a fear of that inclusion means not restricting people openly by these rules. But I think that's rubbish, because to me, how can you operate within somewhere or be expected to act appropriately if you have no idea what those rules are? You know, be like, I don't know, be like trying to play Monopoly, but you've never played before and no one's telling you what the rules are. It's just daft. It's really stressful for the individual as well. So no.
It also makes me think a lot about shame, actually, is kind of the first word that comes to mind, because there is definitely an implicit shame in, I don't know, not being able to make it to the toilet in time because the toilet's too far away from where you are, if you're somebody that has a bladder infection, for example, or a shame in lying on the ground because you're tired and you're just going to take a nap in the middle of the room. So I think there is also that idea of monitoring or disciplining through shame in response to the other. So we're joining you again after a 2-minute pause.
Oh, yeah. So what happened is that I felt a light bulb, and I think I may have lost it again, but just bear with me. We were talking about shame in the gallery spaces and whether or not the guides are potentially mitigating that issue. And I honestly, I don't know about that. I really hope they do, if not now, someday. But what's really important is that I think we need to start thinking more in an art space. We think a lot about the art, but we don't think a lot about the humans. And I think that is the sort of the issue. And if we put as much thought into what it's like to be healthy and go round an exhibition that could take you, I don't know, say an hour, and you're within that exhibition for an hour. Like, I don't know. I always have these amazing dreams that there's like some sort of a water bar halfway round and some sort of pods, quiet pods. And, you know, always that transition between rooms as well. Why there's not a really comfy sofa, I do not understand.
Yeah.
If for no one else than for the invigilators, right? No, I'm joking.
No, they're standing up for hours. I think that's a very fair comment.
Yes. The thing is, right, is that, you know, my ideal, right, would be that a big art gallery with lots of spaces just kind of said, Anna, you know, borrow this, do research, install sofas and put a water machine here, and, you know, what colour should the walls be if they're not white? Yeah, like I really like, you know, let's talk about dyslexia and dyscalculia on white. It's really intense. And also in terms of, you know, visual impact, I get a lot of visual disturbance from white walls, and it can give me a bit of a headache because of the light reflecting so much. So yeah, I think there's so much that needs to be tested, so much that we need to learn about what the future art gallery, institution, museum looks like. And I know that's been addressed academically in terms of, you know, the future of art and this sorts of things in terms of the physical assets and but we're not really thinking that much about what engagement's journey could look like, what the future of engagement in an art space is.
Totally. No, I really appreciate that. I would love to go back to language, given that we're using language and on a podcast. How do you hear words?
So, for example, Renae, this is always going to be, I think the reason I was quite nervous about doing this is because, for example, with your voice is very soothing, and it's like very, like, could you just say something like the cat sat on the mat?
The cat sat on the mat. Oh, I also played it for you. Sorry. The cat sat on the mat.
It's smooth, right? And it's got such a nice, you've got lovely iterations of speech, like how the sound moves up and down. So the problem with that is both a blessing and a curse. It's very soothing, but I struggle to pay attention to what the words mean because I'm listening to how the words sound. So sometimes, especially in a long question, I get a bit lost because I'm just thinking, oh, that's nice sounds. And I forget what the content was.
Yeah, nice. Going into the details, actually. It's really this process, it feels like, of zooming in also to the tonality and the vibrations.
Yes. The thing is when the words are like fizzling out like that and it just turns into sherbet, it's just really, it really means that the breaks become not like pleasant, they become necessity. Otherwise I'm floating along. Which is really, one of my biggest fears, I think, especially in this kind of situation, is that I float along and I'm not giving 100% of myself.
Also in relation to the pauses, as you said, like these processes that are, quote, inclusive or providing an access actually create a softer approach for many bodies. Since 2007, I've been working on and off with mixed ability dance groups, and I've almost started to think about access as excess, so EXCESS, because for me it's really about creating spaces where multiple lived experiences can coexist more than accessing a neurotypical one, because I've been lost on recordings. After 40 recordings or so, there's definitely that moment where inside I would love a pause, but there's this pressure, or maybe this idea of being professional, or a very capitalist idea about being very efficient, that stops that from being possible.
Yes.
But when you actively ask for it, absolutely, I love that idea. Perhaps for the listener, it's also an overwhelm of information. They're entering into ideas they haven't been a part of before, or thinking and worlding that they haven't had access to. Again, it's like accessing a body other than your own, which can go in all types of neuro-difference. So I really appreciate that idea of, allowing opportunities to be for all bodies. So we're joining you again after a 2-minute pause.
Yeah, I think something that's really hard that we don't talk about enough is that, I'm very lucky. I'm highly privileged because I know what some of my needs are. But actually, a lot of people haven't got a clue what their needs are, but they definitely suffer, in an experience, or, due to something that could be an alternative for them. And I think, a lot of times as well with accessibility, there's this understanding that if someone has needs in accessibility, they know exactly what those things are and what that looks like. But sometimes having options can be really helpful. So if you're an employer and you want to work with people who are autistic, don't assume that they know what their needs are, and that might be a bit of a journey that you may have to go backwards and forwards on. And I wonder, what, I don't know. I wonder within your podcast, what do those options look like, and I wonder whether you'll be able to sort of create some prompts almost from this, if you need to take a break, you can, and I will be grateful. No. But I think, it's of course it was very nerve-wracking, when we first met, about whether you would be able to break the aesthetic of your process and your product, which is these podcasts are, they follow a structure, and that's also something that's then dependable for your audience. because obviously once I got invited, I listened to every single one of your podcasts in my in my need to check whether it was something I could see myself doing. And well, not only did I learn a lot, so thank you, but also, yes, there was a fear about, oh wow, well, how did that work? Did it go through the whole time? And what if I don't know what to say, or what if I lose my speak, or I hope I'm going to come off as, intelligent and competent, and I hope, which of course all of these things were absolutely fine, because you're incredibly receptive and in fact quite excited, which is a first.
Do you know what's just come to me is that Anna talks about that she subverts gallery tradition and gallery culture, and today you have subverted podcast culture. Have you not? I feel like you have.
It'll be interesting. I'm interested to see what listeners think about that.
I also have to share what I would love to share. During our conversation to prepare the podcast, you also taught me Makaton for I'm sorry, which is to rub a circle on your chest.
Yeah. Are you going to tell the story?
I would love to, yeah, because it really shifted just this idea also of like accessing neurotypical realities, and how actually that again is a reciprocal process, like accessing multiple lived experiences. My partner, who would self-identify as being very neurotypical, like high-achieving, German, very precise, really struggles with saying I'm sorry. And I'm very conditioned as an Australian to find manners very important, middle-class Australian with a mother as a kindergarten teacher. So she's teaching children to say I'm sorry, especially her own daughter. And so it was always this point of conflict when I needed a sorry, and he would say I'm sorry through gestures, or a hug, but never actually the words. And I felt so fixated on the words. And then by you sharing this Makaton for I'm sorry, I passed it on. I love it so much, and he loves doing it. So now we're just like frolicking in I'm sorry. But it's really this moment of realizing that neurotypicality is so thin and so few people have it. Actually, this high-achieving, white, masculine, wealthy body that speaks English as a first language and is impeccable at manners, I don't know if they exist.
So that's amazing to hear that, yeah, I mean, because we were talking a lot about a hug can feel quite sort of multiple, can't it? It's got multiple meanings, hugging, and it doesn't necessarily give you what you need to hear, which is the I am sorry, and you need to hear that. So basically the Makaton for I'm sorry is you put your hand to your chest and you just rub it in a clockwise motion. I think it's clockwise, isn't it? Is that clockwise? Yeah. Kind of like a cartoon version of if you were rubbing your tummy to say that like you had had a really good meal. The same, but on your chest, over your heart. And I always loved this Makaton, and I use it all the time, a lot with my family and a lot with my good friends, of which they usually are like, don't worry, and sort of wave their hand, because you can't see this, kind of wave their hand forwards and then backwards as a kind of a dismissal, like, it's okay, don't worry. But yeah, this I love this movement because it seems for me to embody the feeling of apology. And it was really fun because when you told me, because we were talking about the importance of language over action at times, and and it was so fun to be able to share this very specific action, which means this very specific thing in speech. So I'm really, really glad that has been something that you've wanted to embrace. That's amazing.
Yeah, perhaps listeners and myself can go out and learn some more Makaton, because it's really the beginning, I feel, of this non-verbal language. It's really, really a gift.
Oh yeah, I mean, I can never understand why we don't learn basic sign in school. If for nothing else, it's great if you're in the club and you need the toilet. You can tell your friends, I'm off to the toilet with your signing. No, I'm joking, but really, a lot of signs have history, and they're really interesting. Like, I learned the Makaton for biscuit is where you kind of put your arm up and you create a kind of a paw claw with your other hand, and you tap it on your elbow like you're tapping a biscuit on your elbow. And I asked the Makaton instructor, why why is that biscuit? And they said, well, it's from when people were at sea and they would have a ship's biscuit, which is obviously one of the most basic things that you can make on a voyage. And it's supposed to be fairly hardy. I would never want to eat one myself, but and apparently they used to tap them on their arm to make the weevils fall out, which are the little bugs that live in the biscuit. And this is what the Makaton is this tapping of a ship's biscuit on your elbow. It's so funny. I love it.
Oh my God, I hope you don't eat the weevils.
Yeah, I'm sure many a weevil had been had on a ship. But
wow.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Also, as part of this podcast, staying in this theme of physicality, I'm inviting guests to share a proposition with listeners and myself so we can embody your research, and especially circulating around this theme of making invisible disabilities visible. I would, be very curious how we could experience that with you now.
So I'm actually going to hand over the mic to Anna Kay, Anna Knowles, to do with you some breathing that Anna guides me through when I'm really struggling to feel grounded and my stress is rising. So Anna's going to take you through the heat breathing, and I recommend you just give it a whirl.
There are lots of different exercises that I do with Anna, and that Anna's mum and family would do with Anna, and you have to, we're kind of intuitive, I think, to the situation and to where we are. So the simplest one would be the placing of the hands, which you've seen me do, Renae, actually, because I did it in one of the breaks where I placed 2 hands on Anna's shoulders and grounded her down. And Anna's very receptive to the physical, but I would always say first, is it okay if I touch you? So this is something that we do if I can really tell that Anna is incredibly anxious or completely overwhelmed in a situation. I can see that in many different ways. I can see it through Anna's face. She'll often be non-verbal, so I'm looking for all of those non-verbal cues. I can see it in her eyes, and I can see it in her fingers. What I'm doing at the moment is I'm doing what Anna would do, which is moving my fingers very fast, and also one leg will tap and tap and tap and tap. So I'll often say, can I put my hand on your leg? And I'll still that leg, and then I'll say to Anna, close your eyes, Anna. And the leg that I've got my hand on, I'll say, right, okay, through your foot, feel contact with the ground. And sometimes, if it's appropriate, we take socks off or we take shoes off, don't we, if it's appropriate. And I'll say, feel the ground through your foot. Now take the earth up through that leg. So whichever, you can start on a leg. I'm starting here with Anna's right, but it doesn't matter which. And I'll say to feel the earth through your leg and feel that go up towards your knee. And feel the movement, and then feel it go up, up, up towards the top part of your leg, right through your thigh. And then feel it hit your tummy, your stomach. And for this, when Anna's feeling really overwhelmed, I know how her tummy is feeling. So I ask her to then take a big breath in and puff it out. And another one in. And puff it out again. Then I ask Anna to take that. That was a really good out breath, Anna. Then I ask Anna to take that breath up from the tummy, up into the chest, up into the to the right side of the chest. And relax through the right side of the chest. Take another deep breath in and blow the air out. And then I ask her to feel it through her right arm. So feel it go into the shoulder and down the right arm to the fingers. And if she wants to, I invite her to just move her fingers. So just move her fingers, just slowly. And it's slowing everything down. I'll feel that the leg will stop tapping. The fingers are no longer moving. And the eyes, when Anna's really overwhelmed, the eyes search. Her eyes move quickly. And it slows the eyes down. Her eyes are having to be closed as part of this. So we're in the arm, we're in the fingers, and then we come up down the back of the arm. And I ask Anna to kind of feel it in her shoulders and roll her shoulders back. And do a breath in and breathe it out. And all the time there's this connection through into the floor and into the earth, right into the earth. So she'll be pushing down right with that right leg, the leg that we've come up through. And now I ask her to feel it into her lower back and up her spine. And breathe in. And feel that breath go into the spine and push it out. And into the neck. And breathe in. And push it out. And then we take that across to the left side and we go down the left arm. And we relax the left arm. We perhaps roll the left shoulder back and we move the fingers. And then we take it down the left side of the chest. Back into the tummy where we take the big deep breaths. And we really breathe out. And another one, Anna. And we breathe out. And then we release it down the left thigh. And if we think about it as we're going back down this side, and which we're pushing it back out. We're pushing that breath back out, and then we're going to channel it through the floor. So down the left thigh down the bottom of the left leg. Breathing in, breathing out, and then pushing through the left foot into the floor. So connecting Anna to the floor, to the ground, to the surroundings, calming her down. And then I'll just slowly say to Anna, when you're ready, you can open your eyes. I've got two hands on, I've got my hands on Anna's just above her knees for grounding purposes, to keep her grounded throughout. And depending on where we are, we would go very, very slowly, or sometimes maybe a bit quicker. Or sometimes, Anna, I just do the breathe in and out, don't I? If we're very, very pushed for time. For example, we were doing some work the other day at a conference and we needed to take some time out in the quiet space. It was very overwhelming. And we just did the breaths, didn't we? And I knelt in front of Anna and put my hands on her knees and we just did the breaths. But I think the most important thing is that I will always seek permission to do that. Even if I probably know the answer's going to be yes. I never assume, do I? And there we are. Are you feeling chill?
Yeah, because my eye was twitching and now it's not.
Yeah,
so that was good. And also I realised when I took the fire up into my shoulder, I was like, oh my gosh, my shoulders are like tension, this. They're like up around my ears.
See everywhere. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that was really good. Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful practice. The ladies are now high-fiving for people that are tuning in orally. Really nice. Very lucky to have each other.
Yes.
Very. 100%. Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for inviting us into your apartment in Hull and these amazing practices. I hope we can see one of your visual guides in an exhibition soon and follow your work. Can you let listeners know how we can do that, how we can stay in touch with you?
So I've got a website which is undergoing maintenance. So that is www. I feel like I'm on telly. www.annafarley.co.uk. And also I'm on Instagram. That is at the.anna.log. Reach out. It'd be great if you have any kind of feedback about what it was like to listen to me. That would be great. But also, as I haven't had any kind of feedback about the Trisha Brown guides, if you're out there and you saw one, please get in touch and let me know what you thought. Thank you so much, Renae. It's been very, very exciting. Thank you.
I agree. It's been a really special episode. And please, listeners, if you have any contacts to exhibitions that could be extended with a visual guide, please get in touch and feel free to share these practices, because earth breathing is something that's open to everybody and we can really practice it by ourselves in any moment. So thank you for sharing and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Worlding Podcast. Gefördert durch die Beauftragte der Bundesregierung für Kultur und Medien im Programm NEUSTART Kultur. Hilfsprogramm des Tanzen des Dachverband Tanz Deutschland.